Hi guys, my name is Emily. Welcome to my March wrap-up. March was a really tough month for me. We're doing a reno at work. I work in a bookstore, so this means there's a lot of shuffling of product. It is heavy product, it's really labor intensive, it's really mentally exhausting. And after a day of either working those shifts or covering other people's sales shifts, when you spend all day in the bookstore touching the books, talking about the books, it's really hard to focus on a book. So I've watched a lot of television this month, but the things that I did read I will share with you now. So the first book I read was Made You Up. I can't remember the author's name, but I will put it on the screen. This is a book that I saw Emma Books talk about in her mental health awareness playlist. I will leave a link to that down below. It's the story of a girl who has schizophrenia and she has hallucinations, and it has a lot of weird and wacky things happening, and you're never sure what is a hallucination and what is just weird, wacky high school stuff. Like the things that happen in high school. At my high school, as a joke, some kids decided to wrap themselves in toilet paper and then haha, let's light ourselves on fire. Gee, that was a bad idea. Like, stupid stuff actually happens in high school all the time. With the schizophrenia on top of it, because she's having hallucinations, you never know what is real. So it was a really good read. It made me think a lot about what it would be like to have schizophrenia and how hard it would be to trust what is true. It was important to think about that. The next thing I read was The Wasteland by T.S. Elliot for my #DTProject17. I will leave a link to that playlist down below. I forgot how weird The Wasteland is. It almost seems to be making fun of academia. So with The Wasteland, it's an exercise in references. You have to search for one reference, and then when you realize where that's come from, you realize it's referencing somewhere else, and it's this endless spiral of research, and it almost seems to be making fun of the experience of academia, in which that is what you do. You're supposed to dig, and the further you dig, the more of a mess you get yourself in, and you'll never be able to read everything and understand everything. So The Wasteland, the poem itself, leaves this sort of debris of scholarship that you have to sort through. So my memory card was full and I just ran around and did some things in the meantime. I have no idea what it was saying about The Wasteland. Moving on, I read Monstrous by Marjorie and Sana Takeda. So this is a graphic novel in which the young female protagonist, whose name I'm blanking on at the moment, has something inside of her, some sort of power, and it sort of kind of destroys people. And so we see this sort of council of powerful women who kind of want to capture her, and she's kind of doing her own thing. I'm doing a horrible job describing this. The story was really weird. It was really hard to get into. The one thing that this has going for it is the sheer number of female characters. The male characters that do exist are very much on the periphery, but it was really hard to connect to any of the characters, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the right headspace for it, or if it's maybe just this volume and the style of storytelling. I don't know if I would continue on with the series. The next thing that I read for book club, and I thought I would enjoy it. Like, it ticks all of my boxes. So again, I'm not sure if I'm just not in the right headspace with just the amount of work that I've been doing in a bookstore with books. It's a book that I think requires a lot of discussion and a lot of mental engagement that I think I just didn't have the headspace to give to this book. So it's something that I didn't enjoy reading, but when I put together my discussion video for the book club, I started to get excited about talking about some of the things in this book. And that is Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Thien. So this is the story of Marie, who is a Chinese Canadian living in Vancouver, who is telling us the story of a Ming, who told us the story of her father, who told us the story of his father's sister's husband, and how they sort of kindled a romance through a text called the Book of Records. And it involves layer upon layer of storytelling. And there are multiple truths at work. It plays with the power of literature, it plays with music, and it brings in music as a metaphor. It deals with cultural trauma, and it deals with dissonance between groups of people. It deals with identity and being young and seeing things from multiple angles. It deals with queer identities and what it means to be queer in a time where you're not allowed to be queer. These are all things, as I'm saying them, like, this sounds like it should be the book for me. It also does this really cool thing where it shows Chinese characters building, so there's like a base character that you then build on to build other words, and it like physically shows that happening in the text, and you can see it for yourself. Like, so we physically see language being built and having new meaning. Again, all things I should like, but I did not enjoy this book. I had to force myself to finish. I'm not putting together a review for this just yet because I want to wait for the book club discussion and see if discussing it helps me to like this book, because the writing was beautiful. Everything that happens in it is something I should like, but I didn't like it. So, I don't know. Have you read this? What are your thoughts on it? So the next thing I read was Strong is the New Pretty, a celebration of girls being themselves by Cait T. Parker. So this is a collection of photos of young girls, and they are all doing like badass things, and they have little quotes talking about what it means to be strong and what it means to be a girl. And like, it's a really visually stunning book. We put it in kids reference at work. We put it in 9 to 12 kids reference. I guess you're supposed to give it to young girls for inspiration, but honestly, it looks like something that I would put on a coffee table. I enjoyed it, but I'm a lot older than a 12-year-old. I don't know what 12-year-old Emily would have done with this. While I do recommend that you check this out, that you pick it up, that you maybe consider giving it to the young ladies and men in your life, I don't know how they will respond to it. If you've actually given this to a young person, or you happen to be a young person watching this channel, what are your thoughts? How did this go? The one thing that I will say is that the bodies are not super diverse, because she's taking photos of her white, able-bodied daughter's friends for the majority of the time. It seems like a lot of the photos are of her daughter. This is her daughter on the front. There are a couple of different bodies in here in terms of ability and size, but for the most part, we're looking at thin girls and thin white girls. So the next book I read was because I needed some fluff. I was really in a reading slump. I read a graphic novel and a photography collection. Like, I was so slumpy. I needed something fun and silly and fast-paced. So I picked up book 2 of The Mortal Instruments, City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. So this is part 2 of Clary's story. She and Jace are still being all angsty and stuff. It's real gross that they keep talking about how much Clary looks like Valentine and Jace looks like Valentine. So like, we're really trying to hammer home that they're related. But I asked one of my coworkers, I was like, please, am I reading a book about teen incest here? And she was like, no, Emily, don't worry. It got me a little bit out of my slump. It got me reading other things. So it did its job. I enjoyed it. The next book I have here is The Wanderers by Meg Howrey. This is probably the best thing that I've read this month. This is a slow burner. It's about 3 humans who are selected to go on a mission to Mars. We get to see from their perspectives what it means to perform in such a way that you are the best human to go to Mars. They're in this simulation to see how they would function going to Mars as a team, because to go to Mars for realsies, that's what they say, to go for, it would be for 3 years. So they need to work out the kinks, and so they're going on this training mission. We have Helen, Yoshi, and Sergi. So we have an American woman, a Japanese man, and a Russian man. We also get perspectives of their family members who are hurting and trying to deal with being the loved one of an astronaut, and what it would mean for their loved person to go away for 3 years, what their career in space stuff has done to their relationships. So it's very much about human connection and what it means to be human and how performative we are. The really cool thing about this book was the subtly different cadence of each character. Helen, when you read her narration from her point of view, has a different cadence from Yoshi, who seems to be very musical and metaphorical, and he's looking for the beauty in things. And then we get to Sergi. It's harsher, and of course there's a little bit of sentence structure that isn't quite how we would phrase things in English. Not like comically bad Russian accent. It was beautiful and it was subtle. It was absolutely fantastic. It wasn't a fast-paced novel, but it sucked me in. Every time I picked it up, I found myself just devouring huge chunks of it in like no time at all, because they were just such a fascinating, interconnected group of characters, and I would highly, highly recommend that you pick this up. Then I went to work and I read 4 picture books. So the first one was Gigantosaurus by this lovely human here. So Gigantosaurus is a retelling of The Boy Who Cried Wolf with dinosaurs. It's a board book for ages 0 to 2. It is beautifully illustrated. It is so cute, and it has a rhyming scheme to it. So when you read it out loud to a young person, it's great. It's bouncy. It's beautiful. My manager stood there and read it to me because it was a little bit slow, and it was just the greatest. It was so much fun, and if you have some little people in your life who love dinosaurs, this is perfect. You need to pick this up for them. So the next book that I read was Triangle by these lovely humans here. So Triangle tells the story of Triangle, who lives in a triangle house in a triangle land, and one day he goes on a walk to Square, who lives in Square land, and he plays a trick on him. These little characters are adorable in just the like stone cold expressions that they have on their face, and it's absolutely hilarious. The illustrations are really simple but really vivid. I love the really strong dark colors in it, which maybe says something about me as a human. So I would highly recommend Triangle as well. Then I read If You Ever Want to Bring a Piano to the Beach, Don't by Elise Parsley. So this again is a really cute story, kind of like the If You Give a Mouse a Cookie kind of stories, if you remember those from when you were a kid, but it's about a girl who wants to bring her piano to the beach and disaster ensues. The illustrations are really fun and funny, and again, it's just a fun little silly story to read out loud with people, and I had a good chuckle reading it. The last picture book I read was We're All Wonders by R.J. Palacio, and that is the human who wrote Wonder, of course, the 9 to 12 book about a boy with a facial deformity. So this is a picture book version of it. It was beautifully illustrated. Kind of got a little choked up reading it in the kids section. It does have a hopeful, optimistic ending. And I think it's an important story to read to young people, to discuss difference, disability, and deformity with young people. It's great to open up those kind of discussions in an accessible and age-appropriate way. Then I read Wrecked by Maria Padian. This gives us 3 narrative perspectives. We have Haley, and we have Richard, and then we have these italicized little blurbs of what happened the night of the party. So Haley's roommate was sexually assaulted by one of Richard's housemates. So as we're reading along, we are getting what actually happened. But then we are hearing how Haley's roommate saw things and remembered things, and we're hearing how Richard's housemate saw things and remembered things. So it's a really interesting discussion of rape culture and of slut shaming and of the ways in which we give consent. All these discussions around yes means yes. What does it mean to consent? What does it look like to consent? Can you consent when you are intoxicated? It was good. I think it's an important read if it's your first encounter with this discussion, but I also found it really heavy-handed. I'm not sure if that's because I'm an adult or if people who would be reading this for the first time would also feel that they were kind of being hit heavy-handed with this discussion. I mean, it's important. It's important to talk about yes means yes. It's important to talk to young people about consent. I'm unsure how I feel about this. And then I closed up my month with Charlie the Choo-Choo by Beryl Evans, which is of course Stephen King, just the story of Charlie the Choo-Choo train who gets sad when he gets beaten out by newer, better technology, but then saves the day in the end because magic and logic and stuff. So that is my March wrap up. It was a crazy busy month, and I'm hoping that April gets better. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book you read this month was. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.